President Trump is already getting sued. Hello, everybody. David Shuster here. Just hours after Donald Trump swore to uphold the Constitution, he trampled on it. Now the lawsuits have begun. An issue is a Trump executive order that seeks to end birthright citizenship. Donald Trump believes that people born in the United States to undocumented immigrants should not have citizenship rights. Now, never mind that Trump's logic would have kept members of his own family from becoming citizens. Legal experts point out that the Trump effort flatly contradicts the Constitution's 14th Amendment.
You cannot executive order your way out of the Constitution. The Constitution, I believe the vast majority of legal scholars, a vast majority who look at the language of the 14th Amendment and the history behind it. Let's remember that the 14th Amendment put into our Constitution after the Civil War to say to Black people and people who were formerly slaves, if you are born in this country, you are a full citizen, full stop. It does not matter what color you are. It does not matter your previous status as a slave. What matters is that you were born here. You are a full citizen.
The language in the Constitution's 14th Amendment seems clear. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. The Attorney General of Connecticut, who himself was born in the United States to undocumented immigrants, has already prepared the lawsuit challenging Trump and says Connecticut will lead the effort to defeat the executive order.
When Donald Trump talks about denying a birthright citizenship and attacking anchor babies, he's talking about me and so many others. And when John Eastman, one of his functionaries, talks about reversing birthright citizenship for people that already have citizenship, I mean, that's a direct attack on me and so many others in this country who are already making contributions.
Other legal experts say the only way that Donald Trump could conceivably change birthright citizenship is through a constitutional amendment. Passing an amendment first requires getting a 2/3 vote in both the U.S. House and the Senate. Then, the amendment would have to be approved by 3/4 of the state legislatures, or 38 of the current 50. Could Donald Trump get 2/3 of the House and the Senate? Of course not. And while Republicans do control a majority of the state legislatures, the number is well short of the 38 Trump would need. So a constitutional amendment is not happening.
Our people are hearing about presidential orders or executive orders. He's going to sign a bunch of those tomorrow, a lot of which will deal with immigration. But when it comes to birthright citizenship, that's a constitutional right, and that is a whole different legal process. And I don't see that happening. I really don't see that happening anytime in his term, but it certainly wouldn't happen tomorrow.
There is one other route for President Trump, and that is to take this issue all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. Legal experts say Trump will almost certainly lose initially in federal district court, but that the Supreme Court could conceivably be a wild card.
Never imagined was an issue because this came up during Trump's first term. We heard sounds of this back then. And when I first heard it, I thought, that's ridiculous. Is there anything more fundamental than the idea that if you're on U.S. soil and you give birth, that child is a U.S. citizen? I started looking into the academia around it, and it's an interesting argument. You look at the language, and by the way, it's not just the Constitution. Federal law also enshrines the same language. Someone born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And that's the magic phrase that people on the right seize upon to say that there is no such thing as birthright citizenship, because they argue that that means that someone who has a child here must also be subject to the jurisdiction. And that means a citizen of the United States or a lawful permanent resident, not somebody who is subject to or a citizen of another country. That's the argument. It's never been specifically tested, although the Supreme Court has come close in a number of cases, most of which go back 100 or more years.
In the meantime, the new Trump administration is already pledging to stop issuing papers, passports, and other things that migrant families may need or that their children born in the United States may need to, say, enroll in school or get a driver's license.
The weight of authority leans toward birthright citizenship, maybe for no other reason than it's the way it's been interpreted for centuries now. And for that reason alone, that reliance interest that everybody has had on that kind of right, whether it exists or not, is a strong factor in deciding whether or not it exists, because it's existed for 100 or so years now. But it's possible that a court, the Supreme Court, with a number of conservative justices, may conclude that that subject to the jurisdiction thereof means that someone born on U.S. soil must additionally be born to somebody who is lawfully here. Not necessarily a citizen, lawful permanent resident, but not somebody who is here illegally, in the same way that children of ambassadors do not get birthright citizenship. That would be the argument.
Does it feel like this is part of the goal right here, is that conservatives would like to see what the Supreme Court has to say about this issue?
Absolutely. I think this is something that conservatives think they have a pretty strong argument for. Even the Supreme Court case that they say enshrined birthright citizenship, because it's not only the Constitution, a federal law, and a Supreme Court decision, they say that dealt with the child of lawful permanent residents. So they say it's not even precedential. So this is going to be a really fascinating argument before the Supreme Court. And a lot of folks might be surprised.
President Trump himself, when signing the executive order, was asked by reporters how it would play out in the courts, and Trump wasn't sure. Watch.
Birthright. That's a big one.
What about that one in the courts? That one is likely to be challenged.
Could be. We think we have good grounds, but you could be right. I mean, you'll find out. It's ridiculous. We're the only country in the world that does this with birthright, as you know. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But, you know, we'll see. We have very good grounds.
What President Trump doesn't seem to understand is that our history is unique given the Civil War and slavery. But putting aside history or the legal issues related to our Constitution, there is also an issue here regarding America's morality. In the view of many of us, the United States has a moral obligation to all human beings who are born in the United States and are looking for opportunities to grow, thrive, and contribute to the American story. We are, after all, a nation of immigrants, and it's not the fault of any child if their parents came to the United States legally or illegally. So, on moral grounds alone, many of us believe that birthright citizenship is appropriate and part of the fabric of the United States. Unfortunately, that fabric now includes the suspension of reality and the embrace of nonsense. President Trump insists that crime is way up and that migrants are to blame. Yet, according to FBI crime statistics, violent crime is at the lowest levels in the United States in 50 years. And migrant communities have less violent crime per capita than communities of native-born Americans. But those are inconvenient facts to President Trump and his new administration. They are determined to make life difficult for babies and children born in the United States if Donald Trump doesn't like the skin, color, ethnicity, or native language of their parents. Generally, such discrimination doesn't hold up in court, and clear constitutional amendments like the 14th usually speak for themselves. But with this administration and this Supreme Court, we are in some unusual times. By the way, there are some reports of drama in the Trump family over Donald Jr.'s new girlfriend, Bettina Anderson.
Tina Anderson is a Palm Beach socialite, right? She's from a pretty fancy family herself.
Influencer. I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm more under the influence than I am influencing.
Anderson has a reputation for partying hard and engaging in transactional relationships, and apparently that's not what President Trump wants for Donald Jr. Check out that video at the link below. It generated a lot of comments on YouTube. One of the most popular is from Noah, who wrote, "Don Trump Jr. is what we used to call a greaser." I hear you. I look forward to reading your comments about President Trump already trampling on the Constitution in his second term and now getting sued. I'm David Shuster. Thanks for joining us.